going to be the advantage, solvency, and the disadvantage.
And then what?
The advantage,
Oh,
solvency.
and then our process. Got it.
And solvency, that's what you
Advantage, solvency, and then the disadvantage.
or just say.
Everyone good? At the top, the 2-1R does not do any impact calculus. They concede all of the 1AR arguments as to why we have the largest impact in this round. That means if we win that resource wars is the most important consideration in your decision calculus, then you're always going to vote affirmative because they've spotted a solvency or transitioning away from a fossil fuel economy. There are 3 reasons why our impact outweighs everything you said in the 2-1R. First is magnitude our impact is the largest possible because nations with the largest nuclear weapons arsenals are the nations who are completely dependent on petroleum. The world in which we don't do a plan is the world in which the United States, China, and Russia all have economic incentives to attack each other because the fuel that powers all of their economies is fundamentally running out. This means that policymakers will actually receive an economic incentive to attack other nations and try to get their resources because the resource that's powering their economy is fundamentally running out. The second reason is time frame because our internal links are predicated on the decline of the perception of declining oil reserves. Our impact, our brink is not when we run out of oil, but rather when policymakers perceive that demand is outpacing supply. They'll have an economic incentive to wage war in an attempt to avoid inevitable economic collapse. Additionally, 3 is probability. There are examples of resource conflicts happening in the status quo. Russia's only viable exports oil. The United States is willing to invade other countries' practices of petroleum nations. The status quo are acting violently to secure reserves, ensuring probability. Additionally, the case will turn the disadvantage, not the other way around, because the disadvantage time frame is ridiculously non-unique and empirically denied. Iraq has been unstable for a very long time, and the volatility of oil prices in the past year prove that they do not have any empirical example for their impact scenario. Additionally, the only reason that Iraq is unstable is because of continual U.S. intervention to secure oil both in supplies in the Gulf War and the recent invasion. The plan would transition away from these violent invasions. Also, if you vote affirmative, you solve resource war and you prevent Iraq's civil war based on instability. We turn the disadvantage. Go to the line by line of the advantage. The only argument they extend here is that peak won't happen, but they can see the argument that even if they win the entirety of the peak debate, this is fundamentally irrelevant. All they are doing is delaying the time frame of our impact. Even if we can somehow find enough oil to power our economy for 1 more year, this is fundamentally inevitable because the 2-1R concedes the basic argument that oil is a commodity of finite nature. That means even if the peak is not going to happen right now, it will inevitably happen in the world where the plan doesn't occur. Additionally, the peak is coming now. Our evidence indicates that increasing demand in developing countries and Saudi Arabia restricted reserves prove that the peak will some soon. Additionally, you should prefer all of our evidence because our evidence is based off of a consensus in the scientific and geological community. Their evidence is from economists who want to perpetuate the belief that our economies are in sound condition in the status quo, when actually there is a scientific consensus in regards to the condition of oil reserves right now. Additionally, they concede the argument that there are no major reserves from whence we can extract our oil. The only way in which we can actually power our economy for any large amount of time is we find a major oil reserve. We read conclusive evidence to indicate that 60% the oil reserves that power 60% of the world's petroleum needs are actually depleted in the status quo. That means even if we find minor reserves in the interim, these will not be able to power our economy in the long term. Go to solvency. She gets here with 10 seconds left. Do not undo any of the work for her. She did not send any of the warrants as to why this is true. She said the companies in the United States pollute, but first of all, no linked solar companies are currently using polluting technologies. This will happen regardless of the plan. This means that this is a problem that she has identified that's separate from the plan. Additionally, the plan actually can make this better because by incentivizing solar technology, we actually put money into research and development in which we can perpetuate more third-generation solar technologies like nanosolar, which is not polluting and not environmentally unfriendly. Additionally, no link because the companies that their evidence is just talking about are in China and Japan. The plan does not incentivize Chinese solar technology. This is completely irrelevant and separate from the affirmed plan. Go to the dissent. We're winning substantial risk of the dissad, meaning that every argument that I win on this flow is a reason why you need to prefer all of the impact calculus at the top. There are 3 devastating defense arguments here. First is that prices have already collapsed. This is conceded in the 2-1R AFP evidence indicate that OPEC flooded the market way back in the fall. This means that you should give the dissad 0 weight because prices have already collapsed so dramatically. This also means that the plan has no effect whatsoever on oil prices. Additionally, this empirically disproves their scenario because the volatility of prices that has occurred throughout the entire year proves that Iraq instability will not spill over into a global conflict. it because it has not done so thus far. Additionally, the second argument is that a weak dollar guarantees high prices because Saudi Arabia will always export the oil in a fashion that is economically advantageous, and since the United States is in a recession, nations like China and India are nudging us out of getting the cheap oil. That means that as long as we are in a recession, which we are in the status quo, high oil prices will be high regardless of the affirmed claim. The third reason is that OPEC says that they cannot fill supply gaps. This is reverse bias because it's actually because OPEC is literally admitting that there is not enough oil in the world for us to actually be able to power our economies. This seems throughout Iraq will inevitably unstable because the reason why Iraqi stability occurs in the status quo is because of oil. But if oil is inevitably going to run out, and even OPEC, which has an advantage, which is reverse bias, admits that oil is running out, then that means that there's no chance for Iraqi instability. Thank you.
Paragraph.